Good evening. I'm the Reverend Michael Singer. I'm the rector of St. Mary's Church in Kinston. The accommodators have sorted your questions. Similar questions have been merged into one question. They have also rewritten some of it and added clarity or legibility. For my sake, 4 questions have been asked and answered on the website. Who do you say Jesus Christ is? Having read our profile, what is it about the Diocese of East Carolina that makes you believe that you may be called to serve here as bishop? What are you passionate about in your ministry, in your personal life, and in the world around you? How would you approach the responsibility of establishing policy for our diocese in response to General Convention Resolution 2012-AO49 if you were chosen to serve as Bishop of East Carolina? For those who may not be familiar with this resolution, it is in regards to the blessing of same-sex unions. Since those answers are already available on the website, we will not be asking them tonight. As there are more questions submitted here than we are able to answer tonight, we have placed the questions in a box. Questions will be randomly drawn in order to give every question the same probability of being asked. Our first question in this session will be different for each nominee. The questions are all from the audience. I will draw the questions out of this lovely box. Again, there is an opportunity later this evening for each nominee to answer a question that he or she has not been asked. Rob, you will be first in this round. What has been your toughest trial with faith?
That's one of the toughest questions that I've had, not just today, but regularly through parish ministry. And some would say that I've had it easy. I've never felt as if I've lived outside the love of the church. I've always felt from my youngest days what it's meant to be a part of the body of Christ. Usually my own congregation as a child, as a teenager, and in all of the places where I've lived and served since. But there have certainly been times in the midst of my faith when I've had questions that have needed attention. I've got to say to you that I haven't prayed about a single thing for as long in my life as I've been praying with you about this discernment path. So I would say that in my faith, the times when I have been most challenged or perhaps most uncomfortable have been at those moments when I felt God's Holy Spirit to be stirring somewhere beneath the surface of my life, without me knowing precisely where that stirring would lead. There was a moment years ago, after I'd had a little bit of sabbatical time, when I came back to my congregation in Brantford, Ontario, and I stood at the altar on Easter Sunday and I offered the blessing, and I almost broke into tears. Because in the midst of that moment, I had a clear sense that God was calling me on to somewhere else, but I knew not where. So for me, there are times when I would love it if God's Holy Spirit could offer slightly more clear directions about the paths we're called to take in our lives. This has been a wonderful journey, and it's a journey which I and perhaps a few others in the room are looking forward to seeing to its conclusion and beyond. Because God calls us, that's not the question. And God gives us everything we need for the journey. It'd just be nice sometimes to know a little bit more clearly about the direction.
Thank you, Rob. Mimi? Say a little bit about your vision for promoting clergy wellness.
Clergy wellness, always a challenge. It's an all-consuming job quite often, because we know if the phone rings at 2 o'clock in the morning, we will answer it. We know if there's some place we need to go at 2 o'clock in the morning, we will go there. Holy Week is a fine example of what we just went through, where from Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday, you work every day. And so clergy wellness is really important. Clergy have a high burnout rate. We tend to often sacrifice ourselves and our families for the sake of our jobs, and it's not a good model. And so to promote clergy wellness, the first thing I'd have to do as bishop is model a healthy lifestyle, to work out, to eat well, and to take time off. Sometimes you get together with clergy and we're kind of macho. Oh, I haven't had a day off in 3 weeks, you know. And we go on, and that's not healthy. That's not what we should be modeling for fellow clergy or for you in the congregation. So to promote that, again, it would be my own modeling and teaching and encouraging. Reminding clergy, yes, they need to take time off. Reminding clergy that they have sabbaticals written into their contract. And that is a necessary break sometimes in our lives as clergy. I took a sabbatical last summer. It was a gift. I enjoyed the time off. I came back to work refreshed and ready to go. And so that would be important work for the bishop to do for all the clergy in the diocese, to be aware and mindful of their own health, to take care of themselves, and to perhaps point to them when I would sense them reaching the end of their rope and suggesting that, yes, indeed, it's time to take care of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mimi. David? One of the young people of our congregation submitted this. She's a middle school student. How do you prepare yourself for worship?
I dropped out of Sunday school in the 2nd grade because I hated cutting up magazines and making collages about things I never really understood. But as a young person, I was captivated by the liturgy. I was captivated by the drama of the church. I was captivated by the way that all of the energy of the congregation and the clergy came together for that time of the worship of God. I'm delighted to know that that question came from an 8th grader, because that tells me that that young man or that young woman is well aware of the fact that everybody contributes to worship, and everybody has got to be intentional about that. As priest, I try to find some time of quiet before the service. If people ask me a question 15 minutes before the service, unless the church is on fire, Jesus has returned, or they are imminently about to die, I will ask them to come back and speak to me after the service. I try to be in a place of prayer and relative centeredness as I begin to preside at worship, or as I begin to join others if I'm not presiding, if I'm taking no part whatsoever. It's not just what happens in the few minutes before services on Sunday morning. It's obviously a daily discipline of, as Archbishop Rowan Williams used to say, of putting ourselves where God can get at us. That was his definition of prayer. And I think that that is what I try to do as I prepare myself from worship, is to put myself in that place where God can get at me, where I can set aside the distractions, try to quiet the noise, and be in a place of center and openness to encounter the divine. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Stephen, the final question is for you. What will you do to get to know your parishes and all these parishioners?
Well, that's a very good question, because this is a pretty big diocese. But the most important thing that I can do is be there. And by being there, I mean more than just confirmation. I believe we're the only mainline denomination that still reserves confirmation for the bishop. And though it's a wonderful and fabulous thing, it becomes a distraction sometimes if that's all we do when the bishop visits. There's got to be more opportunities than to pray over young people who have prepared themselves, hopefully very well, to make this incredible decision and to welcome new people. There's also got to be the opportunity for conversation and relationship. One of the things I've done in the past and would continue to do if you called me to be your bishop is that whenever the bishop visits in any of the churches that I've served, we always make it clear that we don't want to just have confirmation and lunch with the vestry. Those are great things, but if that's all we do, it's not enough. We have always had question and answer periods with the bishop and told the congregation that that's going to happen. And we're going to allow plenty of time for that so there can be a chance for conversation and give and take so people can get to know the bishop and the bishop can get to know the people. That would be one of the most important things that I imagine, is actually spending some time in congregations. Conceivably, there could be time even Saturday night, the night before, because obviously in this diocese with lots of driving, the bishop better come there the day before. Otherwise, how is he or she going to get up first thing in the morning for an 8 o'clock service, or 7:30 in some places? Just to take the time to get to know people.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Our next question will be the same for all nominees. The question was submitted online. David, you will go first in this round. A bishop wears many hats. Which hat most excites you, and which hat most challenges you?
One of the things that the Canon to the Ordinary does is stand around somewhere behind the bishop at diocesan liturgies and hold his hat when he's not wearing it. I spent a lot of time holding that hat. A bishop does wear many hats and not just the one that you see them wearing in church. The hat that I think I am most excited about and I am most passionate about is the hat of being the pastor and priest of the diocese, particularly of the clergy, their families, those who give themselves to the life and the work of the church, in effect as a full-time vocation. I know something of the loneliness of ministry in the church. I know something of the challenges, especially the challenges that our church leaders are facing in this time of tremendous change. And they need people to be with them, to listen quietly, prayerfully, patiently, just to be pastorally present. That's one of the things which in this job I've done now for 7 years that I have enjoyed far more than anything else, to be that pastoral presence. But I know that life as a bishop is not all beer and roses. It's not all easy. And the thing, I guess, which I would find most challenging, not that I'm not willing to do it, but that capacity, that role, that hat that the bishop has to carry of being the disciplinarian. Because there are times in a bishop's life when they have to make decisions and carry news which can be potentially life-crushing. Nonetheless, to guard the faith and the sheep of the pasture, the bishop must be willing to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Rob, you will go next in this round.
Thank you. I'm most excited about what I understand to be the bishop's apostolic ministry. The hat the bishop wears as the one who's sent out on behalf of the church, sent out into all of the congregations of the diocese to preach the gospel and to proclaim the good news of Jesus Christ and to do that in ways that are relevant and meaningful for the particular situations where we find ourselves and at the particular time in history where we are living now. I think that the bishop is called to take that particular role, but to do more than to take that on for themselves, but to engage others in the shaping of a vision which expresses God's mission for us. To listen as God's Spirit moves through the lives of our congregations and all of the members of our congregations so that we are able to come together around a common sense of vision. How is God calling us to live? How is God calling us to serve? How is God calling us to go out from our church buildings into the communities where we live and to proclaim the good news there? That's not something most of us find very easy. I think the bishop can be the champion of the vision that holds a diocese together and helps it to move forward. So apostolic ministry is the part of the bishop's ministry that I think I find most exciting. The part I find most challenging is that part that calls on a bishop to work with the other bishops of the church in the leadership of the national and worldwide church. And while I would like to think I've got something to contribute to that and would look forward to it, that's the kind of work that takes a bishop away from home. Just like we as clergy sometimes are drawn into diocesan life. And that's a necessary tension we need to be willing to accept. But when we're drawn away from home, we can lose a sense of what I guess I think are the greater priorities. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Ron. Stephen, you're next.
"35 years ago, when I graduated from Ohio University, the rector of the Church of the Good Shepherd asked me, 'What are you going to do as a Christian person with a journalism degree?' And I responded, 'Someday I'm going to write a book that liberates theology.' He says, 'You mean liberation theology, don't you?' I said, 'No. I want to liberate theology from the academic words that make it so unintelligible. I want to write stuff that people can actually understand, so they can understand the faith.' And 8 years ago, I published the book Saving Salvation, about the rich history of the meaning of the word salvation in everyday language that I hope everybody can understand. And the person who was the rector of the Church of the Good Shepherd 35 years ago bought the book, called me and said, 'Well, you finally did it.' See, part of the bishop's job is to guard the faith, unity, and discipline of the church. That doesn't mean simply handing forward the past. It means taking the gospel and the meaning of the faith that we have adored for centuries and making it intelligible and understandable and compelling to our current time. That's what I really get excited about as the role of bishop, trying to make the faith compelling in our time and make sense of it. Now, what I find challenging is, well, first let me say, as a leader in the church, I have been able to make the tough decisions. I've been able to understand when the buck stops here and to make those choices that need to be made. And when I do, I've found that that can also be a very isolating place to be. The job of a rector, the job of a bishop, can be a very isolating place. And I'm a person who likes to be around people. So I can find that challenging. And so to deal with that, I just don't take myself too seriously and try to be around people who love to laugh. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Mimi, please answer the same question.
Sure. In thinking about it, a bishop does indeed wear very many hats, and a lot of them actually excite me. Preaching and teaching, pastoral care, administration, communication, lots of fun things. But probably the most exciting hat for me is the one I've had a taste of this week as we've traveled throughout the diocese and visited different parishes. Because when we go in there, the stories we hear, the pride of place, the beautiful spaces, all work together to show me not only the enthusiasm and the energy present within that congregation, and also the great pride, but it energizes and gives me enthusiasm then for the work and the mission around the diocese. People are so dedicated. They so love their church. And to be able to share that with so many people, to meet so many people, to get to see so many different places is just an honor and a privilege, and really just a whole lot of fun. So that would probably be the part that I would like the best. The most challenging hat for me would probably be that great big hat that requires a great deal of patience. I tend to get really enthusiastic, and I want to jump in, I want to be a part of things, I want things to move along and move ahead. And really what we have to do in ministry often is sit back and let things unfold. Let people do their work. Let things happen. And we have to get out of the way. And I've learned to do that, but it's not always easy. And so probably the most difficult hat for me to wear will always be the hat that requires patience. Thank you.
Thank you, Mimi. Our final questions for the second session are again from the audience. Each nominee will receive a different question randomly drawn from the box. Stephen, you'll go first in this round. How will you support and grow college ministries at the campuses in our diocese?
How will I support campus and grow campus ministry in the diocese? Well, like with youth ministry, I would want to be there. I want to be able to participate in what happens at the well and perhaps even bring my guitar, like I said about youth. But more than that, this needs to be a priority. This needs to be a priority in the life of the church, especially in dioceses like yours and mine, where we have excellent youth ministries. We do amazing things bringing our young people to camp, and amazing things happen in their lives if things like happening. This is just, but if we don't follow up with the same kind of energy in college ministry, then we're really missing a great opportunity. Because let's face it, when young people go off to college, they really are trying to struggle with the priorities in their life. And the biggest priority becomes getting that degree, or dealing with the relationships that are changing because you've moved away from your high school friends and you've made some new friends, maybe some very, very deep relationships. And that's all creating incredibly new environments. And these things can become all-consuming, the relationships and school, and the faith kind of gets lost or forgotten about sometimes. What we need to do is to be able to invest some money and some time in making sure we have communities that serve our young people at the colleges. This may take some reordering of priorities to be able to make sure that enough dollars are available to have the appropriate people in place on campus and the appropriate facilities available to our young people so that they feel that they are loved, encouraged, welcomed into the church community, and supported in this most incredible time in their lives.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you. David? Describe a program or community effort that was effective in the community you served.
When I was the rector of St. Mark's Church in Milwaukee, which is a medium-sized congregation right on the edge of an urban suburban area, not far from a very large campus of the University of Wisconsin system, so kind of a funky student area, but also not far from Lake Michigan and some very big homes built by beer barons of the past. Real kind of melting pot of a place. One of the things that came to me one day as I was walking down the hall was that hall. It was long, it was white, and it was bare. And I thought, what an opportunity we have. We have artistic people in this congregation. We have artistic people in this community. Could we turn this into a community gallery? Little by little, I began asking folks who I knew were artists and creative types in the congregation, whether they would be willing to share that part of themselves and allow us to hang some of their work. And then we took it out beyond the congregation and began connecting with artists in the areas around us, and asked them to come, and asked them to bring their friends to come, to have gallery openings, to come to see this incredible expression of somebody's inner self. I had no idea where that was going to go when we hung that first picture. But it was so wonderful, it was so exciting to see a part or a side of folks that we often don't see come out in a way that they could share their creative self with others. And that became a good tool for evangelism as we brought others into the congregation through that lens of creativity.
David, thank you. Mimi. What or where do you feel you need the most help from others?
Laundry? No. Sorry. Always a distinct possibility. Something I have felt that I have never felt before in this process is the intensity of the prayers that have surrounded me. It has been such a gift. And I know I have been prayed for in the past by our Daughters of the King, by people in the parish, by friends, but the experience I have had here in this process of the prayer that has just risen and surrounded all of the nominees has really been a gift to me. I have never felt anything like it. And so I would say from this experience, what I have learned is how powerful that is and how much I need that in my life. So probably what I would ask then is that people continue to pray for whoever is called as bishop to East Carolina, because that certainly, if it were me, that would certainly be something that I would hold near and dear to my heart after the experience I've had in this discernment process within this diocese. So I thank all of you for that support that we have received. I ask you to keep up the good work. And if you are interested in laundry, talk to me after. Thank you.
Thank you, Mimi. Rob, the next question's for you. Again, this question was submitted by youth of the diocese. What are your hopes for the youth of this diocese?
I've only met a couple so far. I'd like the hopes to be more than just generalized. I hope to get to know a good number of the young people of this diocese through my involvement with their parishes, through my involvement with the youth ministry functions that would happen, so that in getting to know them, I could help to support them in the hopes and dreams that God gives them. I live in a community with a bunch of really highly educated people who have sometimes very demanding and difficult dreams and hopes for their kids. And when we arrived with high school kids. And so we entered into a community where it seemed like when a young person would come to church, the first question might be, and so essentially it went like this: what are you doing with the rest of your life? It was more like, where are you going to college? What are you taking? And I think sometimes young people can feel an awful lot of pressure to have it all worked out before they get a chance to experience it. So I guess what I'd hope for and what my dreams would be for the young people of this diocese is that they'd have the kind of support from their congregations that means that people love seeing them there when they're there. And ask them those detailed questions, sure, because we don't want to not ask those questions. But to then accompany them, whether they feel called to some particular college or university in this state, which might be at the top of the list for some people, or they're called to go to another one that might maybe not have the same reputation. I'm trying to tease without choosing between Duke and North Carolina or something. But to pick the place where they believe God is leading them, and to understand that God has a vocation and a calling for them that's personal, and it's not just about whether or not they might be a priest someday, or a doctor, or a teacher, but it's about learning how God's leading them on the journey of their life, which is really just getting started. I'd love to share with young people in the discoveries that they make as they go forward.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you all for your responses. Thank you.